We've been taught to chase motivation, but what if I told you that motivation is fleeting, and the people who build empires, impact lives, and leave legacies, they rely on something far more powerful: discipline. We've been taught to chase motivation, but what if I told you that motivation is fleeting, and the people who build empires, impact lives, and leave legacies, they rely on something far more powerful: discipline. There's a dangerous lie we've all been sold: the idea that we need to feel motivated to do something worthwhile, that we must wait for the spark, the surge, the lightning bolt of inspiration before we take the first step. But let's be honest, motivation is fleeting. It rises and falls like the tide. One moment it's there, and the next it's gone. And if you rely on motivation to carry you to success, you're building your future on sand. The truth is, every remarkable human being who has built something that lasts, something that matters, did not rely on motivation. They relied on discipline. We all love motivation. It feels good. It's inspiring. It lights something inside of us, almost like a fireworks show inside our chest. We hear a speech, watch a video, read a quote, and suddenly we're ready to conquer the world. But what happens the next morning when the alarm goes off at 5 a.m.? What happens when there's no music playing in the background, no one clapping for us, and the only thing waiting is a hard task in a silent room? That's where motivation fades, and that's where discipline must take over. Motivation is a spark. It gives us the emotional boost to begin. But emotion is fleeting by nature. It changes with sleep, with stress, with our environment. It rises and falls like the tide. It's useful, but it is not dependable. And if we build our goals, our businesses, our careers, our health, on something as unstable as motivation, we're setting ourselves up for inconsistency, for frustration, and ultimately for failure. Discipline, however, is not dependent on emotion. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. Discipline isn't loud or flashy, it's steady. It's that quiet voice that whispers, "Do it anyway." When you're tired, discipline reminds you of your responsibility. When you're scared, discipline calls on your courage. When you're tempted, discipline brings your values to the front of the line. It doesn't argue, it doesn't negotiate, it doesn't wait to feel ready. It just moves forward every day. Think of discipline as the engine in a car. The spark plug may start the ignition, but the engine is what carries you across thousands of miles. Without it, you're stuck. Discipline is that engine. It may not be pretty or exciting, but it gets you where you want to go, through the boring, hard, quiet, and sometimes painful miles that motivation simply can't carry you through. Some people confuse discipline with punishment, as if it's something you force yourself into against your will. But that's not what real discipline is. Real discipline is a conscious decision to act in alignment with your purpose, even when your emotions are pulling you in 100 different directions. It's a form of self-respect. You choose discipline because you know what's important. You know what's at stake. You know what you're working toward, and you're not willing to trade that for short-term comfort. This is the difference between wishing for change and becoming the person who creates change. Anyone can wish, anyone can want, but few are willing to commit to the process that change requires. That process is discipline. It's built through repetition, through structure, through small choices made every single day, not when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. Discipline doesn't scream, it doesn't perform, it just shows up and does the work. You don't need to wait for inspiration to strike before taking action. In fact, the most successful people are the ones who have trained themselves to act without needing to feel inspired. They've shifted their mindset from "do I feel like doing this?" to "is this what I said I would do?" And that shift changes everything. Imagine if you only brushed your teeth when you felt motivated. Imagine if a firefighter only responded to a call when they felt inspired, or if a parent only fed their child when it was convenient. No one lives this way in areas where responsibility is clear. But in our personal goals, we often let ourselves off the hook, waiting for motivation like it's some kind of divine permission to act. We don't need permission to take responsibility for our own growth. We need discipline because discipline builds trust, not just with others, but with yourself. Every time you follow through, even when it's hard, you're proving to yourself that you're reliable. You're building integrity. And that integrity becomes the foundation of confidence. It's the inner knowing that says, "I don't have to hope I'll succeed. I know I'll show up, and that's enough." Discipline is freedom. It's not about rigidity, it's about reliability. It frees you from the trap of your own excuses. It liberates you from the roller coaster of emotion-based living. It creates a rhythm, a foundation, a path that you can walk even when the storm hits. Motivation is the spark, yes. But discipline is the engine that gets you to your destination. There's a certain kind of quiet power that comes when you do what you said you were going to do, especially when no one is watching. That power isn't about shouting your success from the rooftops or proving yourself to the world. It's about proving yourself to yourself. It's about building trust, not in others first, but within yourself. That trust is the root of self-respect, confidence, and resilience, and it's cultivated through discipline. Every time you make a promise to yourself and follow through, you're strengthening a psychological contract. And every time you break that promise, you chip away at it. Over time, that either builds into a structure of unwavering trust, or it crumbles into self-doubt, inconsistency, and lack of belief. We often talk about trusting other people, leaders, teams, relationships. But how often do we stop and ask, can I trust myself? When you live with discipline, what you're really doing is creating internal alignment between your thoughts, words, and actions. That alignment is the foundation of integrity. If you say you'll wake up early to work on your goals and you do it, even when it's hard, you're telling yourself, I keep my word. If you commit to eating clean or saving money or showing up for someone, and you do it, even when no one acknowledges it, even when there's no instant reward, you're reinforcing your own character. The problem is, most people think of discipline as something that comes from the outside. Rules, restrictions, expectations. But real discipline isn't about being controlled. It's about being intentional. It's a conscious decision to be who you say you are. And that decision starts with understanding that your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. If you constantly make promises to yourself and don't follow through, you start believing that your words don't matter. That inner voice that once said you've got this becomes quieter, more doubtful. You start hesitating. You second-guess yourself, and the bigger tragedy, others start to sense it too, because people can feel when someone doesn't believe in themselves. You can't fake inner alignment. You can't fake consistency. But when you live in discipline, your actions begin to speak louder than your words. Leadership, influence, and impact all stem from trust. And people don't trust you because you speak well. They trust you because they can rely on you, because your actions match your values, because you show up, not just when it's fun, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's hard. That kind of person builds credibility in every room they walk into without saying a word. The trust you build with yourself through discipline becomes the compass that guides your decisions. You start recognizing the difference between what's easy and what's right. You no longer fall into the trap of short-term gratification because you're grounded in long-term vision. And the more you trust yourself to stay on course, the more others trust you to lead the way. Think about the people you admire, the ones whose words carry weight. Chances are they've built their reputation not on charisma, but on consistency. They don't flinch under pressure. They don't chase applause. They do the work, day in and day out, and that track record earns them respect. That's not luck. That's discipline in action. And here's the paradox. The more disciplined you are, the more freedom you create. Not just freedom of time or opportunity, but freedom from guilt, shame, and regret. When you live out of alignment, there's always a weight you carry. You know you're not doing what you're capable of. You know you're cutting corners. That inner tension drains energy. But when you honor your word to yourself, you live light, you sleep better, you feel stronger because you trust yourself. This is where confidence truly comes from, not from hype or performance, but from lived experience. Confidence isn't about feeling invincible. It's about knowing that you'll show up, no matter what. And when you have that kind of trust in yourself, you stop waiting for the world to tell you who you are. You already know. Every successful person you admire, every leader who commands respect, every innovator who changed the game, they all have one thing in common. They stayed the course when no one else believed in the journey. That unwavering persistence wasn't fueled by motivation. It was driven by discipline. Discipline is what allows you to keep showing up long after the excitement wears off. It's the grit behind greatness, the quiet force that carries you through the days when your goals feel far away and your energy is running low. Motivation is like a match. It burns hot and fast, but it dies quickly. Discipline, on the other hand, is like an internal engine. It keeps going even when the world throws obstacles in your path. Discipline doesn't care if you feel like it today. It doesn't ask for your mood, your inspiration, or even your agreement. It just requires your decision. A decision to continue. A decision to act with intention. A decision to hold yourself to a standard regardless of your circumstances. This is where most people fall off. They wait to feel motivated before they take action. But the truth is, feelings are fleeting. Some days you're going to feel like you can conquer the world. Other days, you're going to question why you even started. But discipline isn't built on feelings. It's built on values, on purpose, on a vision of something greater than comfort. And the people who build something that matters in this world are the ones who have learned to act despite how they feel, not because of it. When the challenges come, and they will, it's not motivation that sees you through. It's the habits you've built, the commitments you've made, and the clarity you've anchored yourself to. Discipline gives you the ability to move forward even in the face of doubt. It reminds you of your why when the how feels impossible, and it gives you control in a world that's constantly shifting around you. We often talk about perseverance like it's a trait you're either born with or you're not. But that's not true. Perseverance is the result of choices made repeatedly over time. It's a muscle that grows every time you keep going, every time you rise after a fall, every time you say yes to your goals when no would be easier. It's not dramatic, it's not glamorous, but it's the single greatest predictor of success. Discipline teaches you to lead yourself before you try to lead others. Because if you can't hold yourself accountable, how can you expect to inspire anyone else? It's not just about getting up early or grinding harder. It's about developing the character that can carry vision through adversity. When others quit, when pressure mounts, when plans fall apart, discipline holds the line. It's also how you earn self-respect, because deep down you know when you're cutting corners. You know when you're taking the easy way out, and that internal betrayal chips away at your confidence over time. But when you make a promise to yourself and keep it, especially when it's hard, you build trust with the one person who matters most. That's the core of real confidence, not arrogance, not bravado, but the quiet certainty that you'll follow through. Discipline also allows you to focus. In a world of constant distraction, being disciplined enough to say no. No to noise, no to instant gratification, no to shortcuts, is a superpower. Focus isn't just about time management. It's about energy alignment. It's about choosing what matters most and shutting out everything that doesn't. And that kind of focus only comes when you've trained your mind to value long-term gain over short-term satisfaction. Over time, this kind of discipline becomes your edge. While others wait for inspiration, you've already begun. While others chase approval, you stay grounded in purpose. While others fear discomfort, you see it as the training ground for growth. That's not because you're special. It's because you made a decision. A decision to show up with intention. A decision to choose consistency over chaos. A decision to live in alignment with your vision, not your emotions. And the truth is, you will be tempted to quit. You will be tested. You will be underestimated. But discipline won't let you stay small. It won't let you settle. It won't let you hand over your power to fear, fatigue, or failure. Because discipline isn't just a practice. It's a mindset, a way of being. A declaration that says, no matter what happens, I will not give up on what I believe in. The difference between those who lead and those who follow often comes down to how they respond in moments of pressure, boredom, or uncertainty. Discipline is not just about doing hard things. It's about doing the right things, especially when no one is watching. It's the ability to align your actions with your values on a daily basis, even when there's no applause, no validation, no recognition. That is where true growth happens, not in the grand gestures, but in the small, deliberate decisions made over and over again. People talk about overnight success, but what they don't see are the years of quiet sacrifice, the lonely mornings, the unseen efforts that built that moment. Discipline is the bridge between your vision and your reality. It is the force that turns a dream into a strategy. and a strategy into results. Most people wait for motivation to strike like lightning, hoping one day they'll feel ready. But readiness is a myth. The truth is, you rarely feel ready to take big steps. You rarely feel fully prepared to face discomfort. But discipline doesn't wait for you to be ready. It dares you to begin. It's in those moments of hesitation where discipline steps in and says, move anyway. The discipline to act in the face of resistance, to push through the fog of doubt, to stay the course when excitement fades. That's the trait that separates leaders from spectators. And that discipline is built through repetition, through structure, through making your values visible in your daily habits. So many people chase after results without paying attention to the process. They want the outcome, but they resist the system. But without a system, without a consistent rhythm to your behavior, you leave your success up to chance. Discipline creates predictability. It creates stability. When you train yourself to act in alignment with your goals, regardless of external circumstances, you eliminate decision fatigue. You're no longer asking, should I do this today? You're saying, this is what I do. It becomes part of your identity. That shift, from optional to automatic, is where momentum lives. The more you follow through on your promises to yourself, the easier it becomes to build and sustain progress. Because it's not willpower you're relying on anymore, it's structure, and structure, when built with intention, liberates. Discipline also creates freedom. It sounds counterintuitive, but think about it. When you're disciplined with your time, you gain more of it. When you're disciplined with your energy, you avoid burnout. When you're disciplined with your focus, you become more productive and less reactive. Most people are ruled by urgency. They bounce from one distraction to another, never quite in control of their day. But the person who disciplines themselves to live proactively instead of reactively begins to rise above the noise. They start living by design, not by default. And that's what leadership is about. Not just inspiring others, but living in a way that models what matters most. It also comes down to integrity. When you live with discipline, you are in integrity with yourself. You're not saying one thing and doing another. You're not caught in the cycle of guilt and avoidance that plagues so many people who break promises to themselves. You stand for something. You operate from a place of self-respect. Because every time you say you'll do something, and you actually do it, you reinforce the belief that you're reliable, capable, and worthy of trust. And over time, that internal trust becomes the foundation for confidence. Not the kind of confidence that wavers in the face of criticism, but the kind that says, I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. In a world that often glorifies chaos and hustle, discipline brings clarity. It clears the mental clutter. It reminds you of what's essential. You don't need to be everywhere, do everything, or say yes to everyone. You need to be focused. You need to be consistent. And you need to be willing to say no to the things that pull you away from what matters. Discipline gives you the power to choose your priorities with intention instead of being pulled by pressure or opinion. That's where you gain control, not over the world around you, but over your choices, your habits, and your direction. In every life journey, there comes a moment where clarity meets conflict. The moment when you know what you need to do, but everything around you seems to make it difficult to do it. That's the space where discipline becomes more than a routine. It becomes a declaration. It's easy to stay committed when the path is clear and the world supports your decisions. But real discipline is forged in the moments when you're tempted to quit, to compromise, or to cut corners. And yet, it's in those very moments that discipline proves its worth. It becomes your internal compass, pointing you back to your core purpose, reminding you that ease was never the goal, growth was. Every leader, every high achiever, every person who's ever changed the world has faced the same inner war. The war between what feels good now and what builds a better future. That tension exists in all of us. But those who choose discipline over comfort create a life where purpose guides them, not preference. They understand that feelings are fleeting, but values are foundational. They don't let moods determine their actions. They let mission define their momentum. That kind of consistency is what earns trust. Not only the trust of others, but perhaps more importantly, the trust within yourself. Self-trust is not built by promises. It's built by patterns, and patterns are born from discipline. When you say you'll wake up at 6 a.m., and you actually do it, not once, but every day, you send a message to yourself that says, my word matters. When you commit to writing, studying, training, or showing up regardless of how you feel, you reinforce that message. Over time, your brain begins to trust you. And when you trust yourself, you no longer need to rely on external motivation or external approval to keep going. You operate from an internal belief system rooted in commitment. And that kind of foundation is unshakable. Discipline, however, isn't rigid, it's adaptive. It doesn't mean you never bend or adjust. It means you know the difference between making adjustments and making excuses. That's what separates those who are merely busy from those who are truly effective. Many people confuse being overwhelmed with being productive. But discipline is what helps you filter the noise and focus on what actually moves the needle. It forces you to get honest about where your time, energy, and attention are going. It forces you to ask, is what I'm doing today aligned with who I want to become? And if the answer is no, discipline empowers you to change direction, not out of shame, but out of clarity. Clarity is power, and clarity paired with discipline is unstoppable. The clearer you are on your why, the less distracted you become by what-ifs. But clarity alone is not enough. Many people know what they want. Fewer are willing to pay the price daily, because the cost of discipline is discomfort. It's waking up early when you're tired. It's saying no when it would be easier to say yes. It's showing up consistently when the results are invisible. But here's the paradox. What seems like a sacrifice now becomes freedom later. And what seems like freedom now, the freedom to sleep in, to skip, to procrastinate, becomes regret later. Discipline is delayed gratification in action. It's choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term pleasure. Too often we are told to follow our passion, as if passion is this constant fuel source that will carry us through any challenge. But passion fades. Emotion shifts, excitement wears off, and when it does, what remains is discipline. That's the true driver of success. Passion may start the journey, but discipline finishes it. Discipline is what keeps you going when the fire goes out. It's what picks you back up after failure, realigns you after distraction, and grounds you when life becomes chaotic. It's not flashy. It doesn't get headlines, but it gets results. And in a world obsessed with fast wins, discipline is the long-game strategy that never stops delivering. In the quiet moments when no one is cheering, when the spotlight is off, and when no one else seems to care, that's where discipline becomes your greatest asset, because that's when you show the world, and yourself, who you really are. Not by what you say, but by what you do, day after day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.